freedom, pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all. So with
deep appreciation for the blessings of liberty that we know in this great country of ours, welcome to another edition of Character Matters. I'm Dr. George Simon, talking about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the defining phenomenon of our time, and the thing that poses the greatest risk to our liberties, and that is the character crisis that we face. And we're going to be talking about that again tonight, as we do every Sunday night at this time, and inviting you to participate by calling in at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. We have a lot to talk about tonight. First, I want to say a big thank you to the listeners for putting up with last week's technical difficulties. And I also want to thank our guest, Tracy Shorn, the Chump Lady, for her kind appearance on the program, talking about her book and her blog, and sharing her thoughts that resonate so well with my own about the kinds of predicaments that folks find themselves in, especially when they seek help with traditionally minded therapists, when they seek help for their problems dealing with a character-impaired person. Many times they come away from that experience only feeling upset and frustrated, and that's because this phenomenon that we are dealing with, this phenomenon of character disturbance, was never meant to be dealt with the traditional psychology paradigms that have been around for such a long time. These methods that were designed to treat neurosis, they were designed to treat those individuals who were suffering from unreasonable fears and anxieties, mostly unconscious fears and anxieties that were making them nervous wrecks in many respects and causing them physical sicknesses for which there was no physical explanation, but rather only anxiety and inner turmoil at the root. That's what our traditional psychology paradigms were meant to deal with. They were never, ever meant to deal with, and they are not effective for dealing with, those problems that are caused by individuals' deficiencies of character. Those kinds of issues require an entirely different approach, and unfortunately what most people who are in a relationship with somebody of impaired character and who are at their wits' end, they're exasperated, and they go to someone for help, what they realize, all too often after they've invested much time and energy and a lot of money many times, is that they really don't get the help they need. And many times they feel like the therapist got bamboozled. And also they feel not validated. They feel even crazier than they did at the start. And this is really a really damaging situation emotionally for those who just happen to be in relationships with people of truly impaired or problematic character. So I know this is a widespread problem. That's why I have studied what I've studied for the past almost 30 years, why I've written all that I have written, why I continue to blog and do seminars. And by the way, I have some announcements about that a little later on. I'm going to talk a little bit also later on about some upcoming programs that we have, some upcoming guests that we're going to have. But I also want to talk tonight about the thrust of the articles that have appeared on the blog these past couple of weeks on my manipulative-people.com blog. This is where you can find hundreds of articles, not only good articles about how to empower yourself in relationships with character-disturbed people, how to deal with them more effectively, how to judge the kind of person that you're dealing with, how to spot their tactics, how to be able to respond to them, how to validate your feelings, how to get the right kind of help. All that information is on my manipulative-people.com blog. Not only are there many articles there for you, but there are a number of wonderful folks who read the blog regularly and who contribute their own experiences, not just to share the problems that they've been through, but to share all those things that they have realized have worked for them and empowered them in their lives, tools that they have accessed, books that they have read, not just my own, books and other works that they have come across, tools that they have come across that have empowered them in their relationships. Much rich material on the manipulative-people.com blog. It's not just for manipulative people. Started out that way, but it really is a resource for dealing with all kinds of problems that a person might face dealing with someone of impaired character. So I invite you all to avail yourself of the manipulative-people.com blog. And I don't just write for that blog. I also write for another blog that's based in the United Kingdom, a very popular blog. The blog title is called Psychology, Philosophy, and Real Life, and the site is counseling with 2 L's resource.com, all one word, counseling resource with 2 L's, by the way, .com. I write at least one article a week there, and I also have some articles that I wrote for a feature that they have on the blog, Ask the Psychologist. I haven't written for that feature in a few years, but I have many articles on there, so you can find all kinds of information on timely topics pertaining to psychological matters and also other matters on the counselingresource.com blog, as well as my own blog, manipulative-people.com. This past week, the article had to do with abuse and exploitation being able to take many forms. It was an introductory article to a series that we're going to be doing for the next 2 or 3 weeks, and there'll be many contributions, I'm sure, from the blog readers to this series of articles, all of which should be informative. But I wanted to say a little bit about why I felt compelled to redo a series like this. I get probably 24 emails a week from folks on various matters. Many times folks are calling to request consultations of various types. I do specialized consultations. I don't do therapy over the phone or assessments over the phone anymore. I never did that, but I don't do that kind of thing over the phone. Never did, and I don't engage in the active practice anymore that I engaged in for so many years, with limited exceptions. But I do these consultations with folks who are seeking to empower themselves and to put the principles that I write about in my 2 books, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, and Character Disturbance, the Phenomenon of Our Age. I do my best to amplify and expand upon the principles that I write about in those books, and to answer specific questions folks have about how to put those principles into practice. Most folks who read the material on the blog and who read the books have gotten enough in the way of helpful tools to be able to turn things in their lives around. But sometimes a little bit more explanation is warranted, and sometimes it helps to talk things through and see how the tools I advocate can be best put into practice. So about half the emails I get are from folks who are seeking those kinds of consultative advice, and I do have information on my blog under the consultations tab about that. So if you want to find out more information about consultations, go to the manipulative-people.blog site and click on the consultations tab, and you'll get information there. But I have been getting so many emails lately from folks on a very similar theme. And really what they've been talking about is the phenomenon of gaslighting, which can take on very many different forms, and often some very subtle forms. The term has gotten to be popular in recent years. It comes from the play and the movie after the play of the same name, Gaslight, made back in the golden era of Hollywood. The movie was a black and white film. I don't know whether it's been colorized or not. It may have been, but at any rate, some guy wanted to get rid of his wife. This is in the day, of course, where no-fault divorce wasn't around, and it wasn't so easy to just discard a relationship. Today, people enter into relationships quite frivolously and end them quite frivolously too. So, it's a different time, as we know. And because it's a different time, we have different problems of a psychological nature. And unfortunately, because our time is characterized by so much rampant narcissism and entitlement, what we have, unfortunately, is an age of rampant character disturbance. But that is neither here nor there right now. What I'm trying to say is that this gentleman in the play and in the movie wanted to get rid of his wife, and so he concocted a scheme to do some things very slickly and very surreptitiously, whereby he would have her believe that she was going crazy. One of the things he did was steadily dim the luminosity on a light, on a gaslit lamp, ever so slightly, incrementally, slowly, to make her think that her vision was failing, and other little things to make her just believe that she was going crazy. He would act like everything is normal. She would say something is not right. He would say it's all in your head, basically, and she would begin to wonder, am I crazy? That's basically the plot. So that's where the term comes from. Well, when I first started in my work and started doing the research for what would become my first book, In Sheep's Clothing, and by the way, I should say, In Sheep's Clothing has been an international bestseller now for almost 18 years. This is an incredible phenomenon. I am so grateful. I can't tell you. It was first published, actually it was published as a spiral-bound edition that I took to workshops with me all across the country in 1995, but it was formally published with a for-real publisher in paperback edition in 1996, in September of 1996. And we are just about a month and a half away from the 18-year anniversary of the first release of In Sheep's Clothing, which is, most books do not have that kind of shelf life. And I am happy to say that the sales volume of In Sheep's Clothing is at or near record high still, and has been for many years. And really, there doesn't seem to be any end in sight. And the reason for this is simple. There is so much of the phenomenon that I talk about in the book that is going on in relationships. Subtle forms of abuse, subtle forms of gaslighting, whereby the person who's the victim of unsavory treatment at the hands of the character-disturbed person knows something's up. Their gut tells them there's something seriously wrong with my partner. Something not right about this person. But because that person likes who they are, doesn't plan on changing, knows full well what the other person would like them to change, knows full well what the other person has become suspicious about and doesn't really care for in their character, the other person usually sets about to make the other person feel crazy. The character-disturbed person, with conviction, blames the other person, calls their judgment into question, invites them to feel guilty or even shameful for even thinking the worst, and overly conscientious, insecure, self-doubting individuals will fall for this trap and be manipulated. This is the heart of it. This is the heart of what goes on in abusive relationships. And so, I felt compelled to write this book. I felt compelled because one of the things I noticed before I wrote In Sheep's Clothing was that I had an incredible number of individuals coming into therapy who would either come by themselves and would describe certain behaviors, or they would come in with their partners, and I would observe certain behaviors that were clearly, to me anyway, they were clearly to me fighting tactics to browbeat the other person and kind of beat them into submission, tactics to get them to succumb to their way of thinking, to see things their way even though they were off base, to manipulate them, to get them to back down, give in, cave in, back off, and to doubt themselves when they had every right to question the character of the individual using these tactics. And it was a light bulb moment for me. And I began to scout for these kinds of things. And then I began to do more formal case study research and gather clinical data and gather example after example after example. And what I realized in the process is that this model, this traditional model that I had been trained in for so many years, and had even practiced for a while, that saw everyone as a victim of insecurity, as a victim of unconscious fears and emotional hang-ups, anxieties that were unknown to them, that this model was inappropriate to describe the basic thing that was wrong with certain individuals. And I also came to realize just how many people fight in all kinds of slick and subtle ways and do much more fighting in their everyday life than they do running. There's a wonderful video out on the internet. I tried to look it up before the program started and I ran out of time. But there's a wonderful video on the YouTube. I don't know whose channel it is. It's one of the popular ones being shared on Facebook and a few other social media. And it shows this young, I think it must be either a Hispanic child or a Latin American child, a cute little kid who has done the typical child thing. He asked his mother if he could have a cupcake. She told him, no, they're going to have dinner, so can't have cupcakes for dinner. Cupcakes are for after dinner. So getting a no there, he does an end run around the mother and goes asks grandmother or somebody else if he can have a cupcake and managed to finagle one. Now, anybody that's had kids knows this scenario, you know? Kids, instinctively, they fight for the things they want. They go after the things they want. If they see something that they find attractive or they think is going to be pleasurable in some way, they go after it. This is human nature. This is human nature. And by the way, this is what we human beings spend 99% of our time doing. And this is the part of our behavior that the traditional paradigms totally ignored for so many years. Anyway, this little kid, yeah, he's so cute. He's trying to talk his way out of a punishment. His mother is threatening to spank him for this behavior, and he's trying to talk his way out of this, and he's also trying to make the case that she should see things his way and that he really didn't do anything so wrong. And it's hilarious. It's laugh out loud funny. It's about 5 minutes long. You can't stop laughing through it. The kid is almost adult-like in his presentation. He's already learned the craft of subtly fighting for the things that he wants and using all the buttons to try and push with mom. But mom, fortunately, isn't buying it. And she is amazed enough, or somebody in the family is amazed enough at this kid's persistence and use of the tactics that they caught this on camera and posted it. It's worth a look-see. I wish I had the name of it for you. Perhaps I'll find it before the end of the hour. But it is hilarious, and it is worth every moment of your time to see. It makes the case about how much fighting we instinctively do in our lives. Always have, always will, and from an early age, it's just human nature. And what the individuals coming into therapy with me, looking for advice and counsel, and who are in relationships with certain types of personalities, what they didn't see that became evident to me and inspired me to write my books is they didn't see the subtle ways that folks were fighting with them to get them to see things their way, to cave into their point of view, and to not corner them or hold them accountable for their behavior. They didn't see their behavior as a fight with subtle tactics. Even worse, buying into traditional psychology paradigms, they many times interpreted their behavior as something else, many times interpreting it through the lens of traditional psychology that saw everybody's behavior as a manifestation of underlying insecurity, of emotional hang-ups, of unresolved emotional conflicts, guilt, shame, all kinds of things. So that was the reason that I was inspired to write my books. They didn't see it, and I wanted to let them know that they could trust their gut. When their gut told them that this person is just fighting with you, trying to get you to cave in, trying to get you to back down, when all the time they know what they're doing, and they know that if you could see what they were up to, you would have them dead to right in their character. If you could see that and judge it accurately, you would have enough of their manipulative and abusive behavior. So I started cataloging the tactics that I saw folks using, tactics that make you that make you doubt your gut hunch. You know, one of the reasons manipulation tactics that I outline in the book are so effective is that in your gut you go on the defensive, but in your head you don't readily see that the tactic is simply a fighting tactic. For example, when somebody has a perfectly logical sounding excuse for the thing that they did, and they rationalize, you begin to doubt that you were justified in calling attention to a hurtful behavior that they did. And that justification they offer is telltale, because when a behavior, and we're judging only behavior now, we're not judging intentions. When a behavior, say somebody violates somebody's space, I heard this many times in abusive relationship. You know, he shoved me, or she shoved me. You know, physical shoving, this is not appropriate. Well, you know, the victim asks, why did you do that? Or wonders, why did you do that? Of course, the reason is really irrelevant. But then the person comes up with an excuse, and it's usually coupled with blaming the victim. Well, you said this or you did that, and that, quote unquote, made me do it, or some other rationalization. And then the person begins to doubt that they have reason to hold this person accountable, and that they simply behaved inappropriately. And this is how the tactics work. This is why they're effective. You forget what your gut is telling you. You go with your head instead. You buy into some of the traditional notions that the person is defending themselves because they feel under attack, and you back off, or you back down, or you give in, and then you're done. Once you don't hold the person accountable, you're pretty much done. And something else that these tactics tell you, when somebody is making their excuses, when they're blaming everybody else for the behavior, when they are trying to justify what they know is wrong, when they're doing that, this is a huge red flag that is so often ignored. They are telling you in no uncertain terms that they're going to do it again. Whatever the behavior is that you have a problem with, and they're trying to justify it or blame you or find a scapegoat or use any of the other tactics that I outlined, there's the red flag. They are telling you that for sure they're going to do it again. You see, if they weren't going to do it again, if they're going to accept the notion that it's inappropriate behavior, that would sound something like, yes, I'm sorry, that was wrong of me to do, I won't do it again. That's what that would sound like. It doesn't sound like, well, you did this or you did that or you made me, or what's a person supposed to do? You're on my case every day. You drive me insane. You don't trust me. Blah, 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 blah. It doesn't sound like that. When a person is going to correct a behavior and not do it again, it sounds like, yes, I'm wrong. I'm going to take responsibility for it. If it keeps happening over and over again and they haven't been able to get the handle on it, the right thing would sound like, I've got a problem here and I need to do something about it. I love you. I love my family. I don't want it to be a mess. I don't want to hurt you anymore. I got to figure out what's wrong with me. I'm going to go get some help. That's what it sounds like. It doesn't sound like you made me do it. Doesn't sound like what's a person supposed to do. Doesn't sound like any of that. All that is a tactic to manipulate you into submission and a warning sign to you that they are fighting two things. They are fighting the principle that is at stake. They don't want to internalize the value that you're calling to their attention. It is not okay to push and shove. It's not okay. It's just not okay. For example. So whenever that excuse is coming, they're telling you that they want to still think it's okay. And that's how you know it's going to happen again. That's how you know it's going to happen again. So stay tuned on the blog this week. There's going to be an interesting series over the next few weeks. I know some folks out there probably have examples to share, so I know that they'll be commenting on the articles. There are already plenty of comments coming in on the first article. So there'll be some helpful pieces of information there. And some of you out there listening tonight may have some situations that you want to share or some questions you want to ask. So give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. I believe that our technical difficulties are resolved, so I think that we're not going to have the problems that we had last week. At least I pray we're not. By the way, I did do a little research here. Gilberto Majano. If you Google that, Gilberto Majano, M-A-J-A-N-O, courtesy of KALB News Channel 5. Gilbert Majano posted on YouTube, hilarious. This little child showing us all just exactly what people spend 99.99% of their time doing their whole life long, which is fighting for the things that they want. And some people fight in the cleverest of ways, but in ways that are hard to detect as purely tactics. That's why I call these things covert aggressive tactics. Covert because they're so subtle, or they're done under such other guises that you can't readily recognize that that's what the person's doing. And you don't trust your gut. And that's how you get manipulated. That's how you fail to hold them accountable. And when that goes on and on and on in a relationship, that's how you end up getting abused, if not physically abused, at least emotionally abused. And there's far more emotional abuse in relationships. This is the entitlement age. There are so many folks that feel entitled to do so many things that people wouldn't even have thought of years ago. Now, I'm not saying that we didn't always have problems. I'm not saying that relationships didn't always have problems. And I'm not saying that there weren't always bad actors out there. There have always been bad actors out there. But you don't have to spend much time at all looking at the statistics. All you have to do is spend about 4 or 5 minutes. Go to, for instance, the World Health Organization site, or the National Centers for Disease Control, or the mental health sites, and look at all the statistics, especially on marriages and relationships, abuse, neglect. Look at any of them, and you will realize that in the last 40 or 50 years, the change in our culture and the change in the character of our relationships has been dramatic. It's been so dramatic, in fact, that we have lost sight of how dramatic a change it has been. It's been so incremental, and we've become so desensitized and so used to how problematic things have become and how character disturbed our general population has become. We've become so insensitive to it, so used to it, so habituated to it, that it's really hard for us to recognize how dramatically the entire face and character of our country has changed. It's dramatic. And unfortunately, that small minority of us left, that 5 to 8% of us who are carrying the weight of it all, trying to make the whole thing work, trying to hold relationships together, trying to hold families together, trying to be responsible at work, trying to do our part to preserve our heritage and our environment, trying to do our part to abide by all the laws and regulations, rules and regulations, the bazillion of them we've concocted in this bizarre notion that somehow we can write enough rules and regulations and pass enough laws to legislate our way out of this character crisis. That's another insanity we can talk about another time. But that 8% of us, that 5 to 8% of us who are doing our best to make it all work, the burden on us grows every single day. More and more is heaped on us. I was talking with a young man just the other day who I knew from many years before. And in his earlier days, it was a tragedy in his home because he had one father figure, a natural father who had abandoned the family basically and abandoned him, and then an abusive father figure that had entered the family, and the only responsible character within the family system was his mother, who did everything, who enabled the dysfunction of everybody else, and who also enabled eventually the dysfunction of her young son. She basically was the conscience for everybody. And we have that phenomenon now, whereby good people among us are having to be the conscience for everybody. Look at even the world stage this is happening. On the world stage, many times it's the United States that tries to play the conscience for the entire world. And we can't even do that very well anymore because within our government structures, unfortunately, we have begun to show some of the, well, we've long been doing this. It is not just a recent beginning, but we are showing some of the same degrees of character dysfunction that many of our people are showing. So we're no role models anymore either. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. And one of the things that my guest last week suggested to me, Tracy, when we were preparing for her appearance on the program last week, and we were doing some correspondence, she said that we ought to have a campaign that tries to make character cool again, where people actually care about what other people are like, and talk it up, and try and make it popular, try and make it cool, try and positively encourage character. Look for it in relationships. Don't glorify the stuff that you see on so-called reality TV. Of course, none of it's reality. All of it's scripted, and all of it's scripted with horrible character. Most of these folks don't need any help being horrible characters. Most of them don't. But the scripts are amplified to make them look even more pathetic than they are, because this is intriguing and interesting and titillating to the viewers. And that says a lot right there. I mean, just think about that for a minute. Think about what's changed since Ozzie and Harriet, Leave It to Beaver, those types of programs, and what we witness today. And think about the short span of time that it's been. You know, they talk about the rate of evolution, the exponential explosion, the exponential growth of knowledge within the technology field, within science and technology. And it is frightening to think of how, how much has changed on the technological stage in the last 20, 30, 40 years. I mean, it's just incredible. From mechanical phonographs to electronic phonographs to no phonographs at all. From CDs to digital downloads. In just a matter of years. This is really phenomenal. Well, the same thing has happened on the character stage. The character decline, the erosion of institutions that once built character. That's what they were fashioned for. I always pick on them, but let's just take professional sports. Where people weren't getting rich. And they had to be role models. And they didn't play dirty. And they didn't use performance-enhancing drugs. And where they honestly had to make of themselves something. And where they honestly had to learn what teamsmanship was all about. What sportsmanship was all about. And when folks were happy to take their family to the ballpark for a fun afternoon out of entertainment, hot dogs and peanuts, and having a good time as a family, and it wasn't all about winning, and it wasn't all about the money, so much has changed, and so fast. And it's been so incremental and so subtle, and we've become so habituated to it, so used to it, that we can't really easily objectively see how far things have gone, how much things have changed, and not for the better in so many respects. Yes, some things have changed for the better. I'm very happy and proud to say that there's still a lot of integrity in this country, and there's still a lot of folks willing to go to the mat, willing to even sacrifice their very lives for important principles like civil rights. I'm happy to say that we have changed in many respects for the better. But that's not the bigger picture. That is not the bigger picture. And we used to be able to even trust that when all is said and done, among all our differences, at least we could count on fair, free elections and let the people decide. We even thought we could count on fair and impartial courts who didn't make law, but rather interpreted the principles and applied them in an unbiased way to the laws that we tried to fashion, so that we would keep within the bounds of the principles that keep us safe and free. None of this happens anymore. So much has changed. And the other thing that I'm sorry to say has changed, and this is really, I think, the root of it. This is the root of it. The foundational entity, the building block of our society, of any society, the family, has been under such assault. Marriages are no longer stable. They're no longer stable. The building of character in children is no longer the prime focus and responsibility of parents. By default, schools are trying to do it. By default, courts are trying to do it. This is ludicrous. It's ludicrous. They can't do it. And by the time they try to do it, it's too late. Kids develop their character by what they see modeled to them in that small little microcosm, that little experiment in social justice we call the home. That's the basic, small, exemplary social experiment. And we're only great as a society when our individual families are solid and great in character themselves. At the church that I attend, my pastor is fond of saying that good marriages build good parishes. It's a catchy little phrase, but there's some truth to it. And by that he means that the foundation of the whole organization, the larger organization is really dependent upon how solid in character and how well adjusted the members are. Well, this is the same for our country. You can't point the finger at the institutions that are coming apart, at the government entities that are skirting the law, at the decisions we make at upper levels that are reprehensible. You can't look at that and not trace that back to the kinds of values and principles that the individuals who hold those offices have, and where those principles came from. Nothing but lies, constantly, from both sides of the political spectrum. Everything is spin. All the devils are in the details. The news media gets their talking points from the news makers. There is no such thing as objective investigative journalism anymore. The only real fifth estate, thank God, is on the internet. You know, necessity is the mother of invention. If Al Gore didn't, I'm being facetious here, didn't invent the internet, we would have had to anyway, because we really need that fifth estate. We really need some forum by which we can talk frankly and honestly. Thank God for the internet. I'm happy to be a part of it. I'm going to one more time invite anybody who also wants to be part of this discussion, who has something they want to contribute, to call in at 718-717-8296. We only have a few minutes more in the program, but we have enough time to share a story or two. But the next few Character Matters programs are going to be devoted to the series that I've got going on the manipulative-people.blog. The manipulative-people.blog will have a series of articles on all the various forms of subtle abuse that can occur in relationships and what's behind it, how to deal with it, how to recognize tactics, how to respond to them appropriately, and most especially how to get the right kind of help. How to get the kind of help that doesn't leave you feeling exasperated. Our guest last week was kind enough to share her personal story of encountering the kind of therapist that got it. And by the way, she was fortunate there to have encountered someone like that, because she had been there and done that before and not gotten the help she had needed. But she was able to run into somebody who cut to the chase, called it like it was, and engaged in the kind of frank talk that she needed to kind of get her life in order, and to see also and confront the kinds of nefarious behaviors that her abusive partner was engaging in, her cheating spouse. We have a call coming in. I'm going to answer it now. Hang on a second. Hello and welcome to Character Matters.
Good evening, Dr.
Good evening.
Simon. I called a few weeks ago regarding my issue with a member in my church, and
Yes.
I promised that I'd call back. So I'm calling back.
Okay, good. Thank you for calling in.
How are you this evening?
I'm just fine, thank you.
Wonderful. Yeah, I was just listening to the show, and I just skimmed through your latest article there regarding predatory characters. And I was telling you about one a few weeks ago, and we're still dealing with that. I'm pretty certain that this is definitely a predatory character. I don't know if you refer to people like that as psychopaths or not, but
Many are.
yeah, she is really pretty much have all the traits. And I don't know if I recall telling you if she has now put her focus on my daughter.
Oh, my.
And my children are young. And she's
As
starting
you-
to do...
I'm sorry, as you know, I call folks like this, in my terminology, predatory aggressive, because I think that's a more descriptive
Right.
label. Yeah.
Right. And you know, you can't be logical with these people.
Yeah.
You can't just say, you know, can you not do that, and then they'll just stop.
Right.
And you know, it was something that I had to even convince my husband, you know, that this was an issue. I told you before that this was someone that had lived with us for a period of time, and we noticed that the behavior was very strange between she and her husband. Well, since that time, and even in the weeks since I spoke with you last, you know, I realized that everyone around her is a victim. You know, her husband's a victim, her daughter is a victim, and I would even go so far to say that even perhaps her mother is also a victim. So when you're always lying, you know, to people to get what you want, and gaslighting, the term, I don't know if you use that term or not, but I was subject to much of that, I realized, you know, looking back on when she was here. And,
Right. I was talking about gaslighting earlier in the program tonight.
yeah, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, and
The
you know,
amount
many
of-
times you can gaslight quite subtly by just saying things with such conviction
Yes.
that the other person begins to doubt themselves and think, well, maybe I am crazy, you know?
Yes, and that's what it was. I mean, that's why I said there was such an air of confusion when they were there. I mean, they were just really petty and very strange things that would happen. One in particular was she'd asked me if she could pick something up from the store for me, and I said, oh, sure. You know, here, I'd like you to get me some dishwashing soap. And I said, you know, this is the brand I prefer. Here's the empty bottle. You can just take this with you so you can remember. And she bought me something that completely different. I mean, completely different. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, I gave her the bottle. Perhaps she didn't understand.
Yeah,
you know,
right,
just,
right.
it was a constant.
Right.
There was constantly things like that. Then I'm
Right.
thinking, okay, well, maybe I'm not communicating right, or, you know, it was just so
Yeah,
bizarre.
you know, we only have a minute and a half. I want to
I
say
know,
something.
I'm sorry.
I want to say something about that, though. What you're pointing out here is a point that I make in my book, and that is how these aggressive personalities just cannot engage in what appears to them to be submissive behavior. In other words, you
Yes.
ask them to do something, they know that you want them to cave into some demand.
Right.
And they just can't bring themselves to do it because
Right.
it's anathema to them.
Right.
If they're not on top and in control and calling the shots, they just can't stand it.
Right. And we saw that even with my husband, you know, I'm thinking, okay, my husband is the one that pays the mortgage here. You know, you don't disrespect my husband.
Yeah.
You're in his house.
Yeah.
You know, and for you to come in, and she wouldn't speak to my husband. You know, there's something that my husband said to her, and she didn't like it. She wouldn't speak to my husband for days.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, you have some nerve. You know.
Well, we have about 25 seconds left. I really appreciate you calling in. It sounds like you've got more information. I wish that we had a little bit more time, but I appreciate you sharing with us. I know you're going to enjoy the series, so stick with the series.
Yeah, I will.
I'll see you again next week.